Hello, so I first off want to thank you all for being here today. The title of my TED Talk is The Life of a Depressed Athlete, and I'd like to start off with showing you guys a little video that explains the statistics of depression in athletes.
Approximately 2/3 of the athletes we surveyed, which would translate to 66,000 kids in the state of Wisconsin, were reporting symptoms of anxiety or depression that in most cases would require some sort of intervention. Also concerning, or more concerning, is the fact that approximately half that had reported moderate or severe anxiety or depression, which we know these are going to really impact their life moving forward. We're not saying this means all kids should go back to all sports immediately. We're saying that administrators, public health policy experts need to consider these negative impacts that we're documenting with the hypothetical impacts that may take place by returning kids and causing more viral spread or other diseases. So we're just saying this is a piece of the puzzle that everybody needs to consider when they decide whether or not to move forward.
Alright, so depression. We've all heard of this concept, but have you ever really applied it to yourself? Yes, after failing a math test, you may feel a little down in the dumps, you're a little upset. That isn't depression, that's just a feeling of upset. So what is depression then? Depression is a constant feeling of sadness and loss of interest, which stops you from doing the normal activities that you particularly depend on. Different types of depression exist, with symptoms ranging from relatively minor to severe. Generally, depression does not result from a single event, but from a mix of events and factors. As you can tell from the simplistic definition, the depressive mood is completely debilitating and makes someone lose interest in the things that they previously had loved. Depression affects an estimated 6.7% of today's youth population in a 12-month period. The prevalence rates for certain age groups such as young adults and older adults are higher. There are approximately 400,000 National Collegiate Athletic Association student athletes competing each year and 5 to 7 million high school athletes involved in competitive interscholastic sports. Given such a high prevalence rate in certain age groups and a large denominator pool of athletes, past notions that athletes are devoid of mental health issues have come under scrutiny by sports medicine providers. Initial data suggests that athletes are far more immune to depression. The purpose of this TED Talk was to review the current research on athletes and depression. Particularly, this talk will provide an overview of studies which have investigated the rate of depression among athletes and discuss relevant risk factors which may contribute to depression among athletes. So how does this affect me? You have all seen me at football games, being the loudest guy in the crowd, barking at the other students that are playing in games. I also play lacrosse, and with this has came a lot of labeling from the people around me. When being asked about me, I have heard multiple people describe me and my friend group as jocks, which is a negative connotation. In previous decades, the jocks are the people that run the school and walk around with a different type of swagger, as they would say. This all started once I got into middle school and started to excel in some of the sports I had been playing. This statement made me feel terrible about myself because I knew that I wasn't the stuck-up kid that just focused on sports. I knew that nobody knew what was going on behind the scenes, and more importantly, in my head. I knew that I was bullied. I bullied all throughout my middle school years, as I was called pepperoni pizza because of the acne on my face, and chunky because of my weight. I knew that I was different from these kids, but didn't know these differences were noticeable. These terrible actions made me so insecure about myself that I was almost scared to leave my house in the beginning of the day. I became lonely and thought that I simply had no friends. 5th grade is when my depression kicked in. It has been going on ever since. I'll never forget the moment where I was called down for pickup and my parents were both there. This was a rare occurrence and I knew that something was up. Soon after getting picked up, I was taken to North Salem Psychiatric, where I would talk to a therapist for hours upon hours about feelings inside my head. There have been many nights where I had little to no sleep and just stayed up listening to Juice WRLD because, what am I going to say? Juice WRLD writes about real lyrics and stuff that I could connect with. To date, the majority of studies investigating the prevalence rate of depression among athletes have been conducted with college athletes. Findings from these studies suggest that the prevalence rate of depression among college athletes ranges from as low as 15.6% to as high as 21%. On the basis of these prevalence rates, as many as 1 in 5 athletes may be depressed. However, there has been a general lack of consistency thus far in these findings. So now, let's get into my most recent years. As I got into high school, the labeling on athletes became far more prevalent than it was in the past. I was called dumb, and people thought they knew all about me. The loud kid in class, there was no way that I was getting good grades. But this was wrong. Sophomore year was the first time I was ever hospitalized for my depression. At this point in time, I was locked in a hospital for a week with absolutely no outlet to the regular world. No way to contact the people I loved, and no communication between my friends who were really worried about me during this tough time. I had artificial cuts on my wrist that eventually turned into scars of bravery and toughness. My depression wasn't who I was. It was something that I wasn't going to let define me, because I knew that I was stronger than that and had more fight inside of me. There has been a recent surge of evidence suggesting that sports concussions can lead to changes in emotional state. And regarding me, I've had 4 concussions throughout my high school and middle school years. Furthermore, there is recent evidence to suggest that sports concussions have long-lasting emotional impact. In a recent survey of 1,044 retired National Football League players, it was found that the 9-year risk of depression diagnosis increased with the number of self-reported concussions. According to the survey, retired athletes reporting 3 or more concussions were 3 times more likely to report being diagnosed with depression when compared with athletes with no history of concussions. With this data, I began to think about what could have caused athletes to begin their depressive moods and problems. Then, as I began conducting research, it became clear that concussions are a major factor that plays a role in depression. As a kid playing tackle football, I had received many blows to the head, and I had been diagnosed with 3 concussions throughout my lifetime. This indicates that athletes are under higher amounts of stress and are more likely to be depressed. At this age, athletes who continue to major universities are under enormous amounts of pressure to perform well for the college. They must entertain a large student body and fan population while maintaining their class schedule, workout schedule, study routine, and free time. They may be told to push through their pain and ignore injuries to stay on the field. Sadly for many, this pressure seems to be an acceptable part of the student-athlete life. For starters, there is a proven link between concussions and depression. Scientific research has concluded that sports concussions have a lasting impact on one's personality and emotional state. Athletes who experience 3 or more concussions have reported a higher likelihood of being diagnosed with depression than athletes with 0 concussions. Depression is a common condition with up to 15% of the population suffering from a bout of depression at some point in their lives. This figure, however, is just an estimate, as most people do not seek help for their depression. Women are twice as likely to suffer from depression as men, although men are less likely to visit their doctors about feelings of depression. Athletes with depression can become less interested in training or skills that they require to perform. They may start turning up late or going straight away post the activity, instead of getting feedback and looking at analysis of other teams or their opposition individually. They may have decreased focus on the exercise and or withdraw socially. They may talk less about the activity that they're going to do, and some even quit the sport entirely. When the athlete can be seen to be less outgoing than their teammates and withdraw from contact socially, it's a common sign of clinical depression. As you can see in my presentation, athletes are people too, and are as likely to depression as any regular human being is. We must be aware of the warning signs before it's too late. Nobody in this world should suffer the way that I did. Thank you so much for coming, and have a wonderful day.